birth of my son was amazing. It was mind-blowing. I was the happiest man in the whole world when he came into the world. Just holding him up in the air, I was just so happy. It was something that I had been asking God for, and right here, right now, I was holding him in my hands, and I was so thankful to God for giving me a boy, because we already had a girl, and our heart desire was for God to give us a boy, and we had plans to have only 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and God just answered the prayer. Okay, we came back from the hospital one day, and we got to the hospital first, and we told them everything that King had been going through. Every time he ate, he always threw up, and his vomit was green in color. So we told them at the hospital what was happening, and they said everything was okay, it was normal, that newborns go through that process, and it was going to come around. And then we got home that day, and I remember that day he slept all through, and we were bothered why he was sleeping and so much. And then we got home. It was even difficult to feed him, because you have to wake him up from sleep to feed him, which was not normal to us. We didn't see it as normal. So when we got home that day, we had to wake him up. We made the food and we gave him the food, and after eating, just a few minutes later, he threw up. And then my wife was saying, something is wrong with this child. And I told her, I said, let's just wait a little bit till morning time, because I think it was going towards the evening. I told her, let's just wait a little till morning time. Let's just observe him, and if nothing changes, we'll take him to the hospital in the morning. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he started losing his breath. He couldn't breathe. And immediately I jumped up, I ran into the room. My wife jumped up, carried him. I took the car seat, and then we ran into the car, and that's how we dashed to the hospital.
When we went to the reception, and they asked us what the problem was. I started to tell them that my son had been throwing up, and the color of his vomit was green. And they said, okay, they were going to take him for some tests and all that. We ran into an ER, because we needed urgent attention. So they took him in, they ran a couple of tests, they came back and said he was fine. I was confused. I asked them, what did they do? Because I'm his mom, and I was the one who saw the vomit. And they said, okay, we're going to check again. So they went back again. I came back to say all his organs, everything was fine. Then I lost it.
I was actually very, very strong at that moment. I knew God was in control. I knew nothing was going to happen to him. And because we already have a word that 2017 we are all living miracles, we knew nothing evil was going to come near us or touch our son. So I was strong at that moment.
So we went into the X-ray room, and they had injected the fluid into his digestive system through the NG tube. I had to hold his head, because my son is very strong. I had to hold his head and his hands to keep him in place. Yeah. My husband was standing right in front of the screen, and while they were trying to find what was going on, they kept trying to inject more fluid. It was at that point that my husband observed something was really wrong.
I saw that the fluid, when they put the fluid into him, it gets to a point, it starts coming back. That's where I discovered that something was wrong somewhere, and one of the doctors around told me that was his intestines, that there's a blockage somewhere. That's why the fluid was returning back, and that was the major problem that he had at the time.
By the time we were done with the X-ray, we were still taking off our protective gear and wondering what the next step was. They handed my son back to me. They took us back to the other room where they had already admitted him. And I got there, and the doctor was there. Her name is Dr. Patel. She was there waiting for me, and she said to me, "Mommy, you need to calm down. You won't be able to go home today." And I said, "No problem, so long as you figured out what's wrong with my son and we can treat him." Then she tells my husband to go home and get a couple of things for an overnight. So my husband left. Then she says to me, "I'm not in position to tell you what's going to happen next, but you might be here for a while." And I said, "Doctor, please tell me what's going on." And she said, "They've sent for the surgeon." I raised my head up. I'm like, "Surgeon,
For
what happened?" And she says, "Okay, it's not in her position to say this, but she will let me know to calm me down. My son is going to be fine, but he needs urgent surgery." And I looked at him and I'm like, "This small boy, surgery." And I'm like, "Is there nothing else we can do?" She said, "Well, the surgeon will tell us." So I sat in suspense, waiting for the surgeon to come. They had to call him because he was off duty actually. They had to call him from home. By the time he came in, his eyes were bloodshot. They had brought papers to me and said I should sign. I said, "Sign what? What are you doing? You're going to do to my son?" Then the surgeon walked in and said, "Madam, have you signed the papers?" And I said, "No, I don't know what people are asking me to sign for." Then he says, "Okay, there's no time. It's urgent. We need to take your son into surgery like right now." I said, "Doctor, what's going on?" He said, "Okay, in 2 minutes, I'll tell you that your son's life is in danger. How he survived to this point to come out of your womb
It's a miracle.
is a miracle." Then he says to me, "Your son's intestines are tied up. It means that since he has been in your womb, he has not received any form of oxygen, any form of blood supply to his digestive system for 9 months." And I asked him, I said, "How is that possible?" And he says to me, "I've told you it's a miracle. You know when you hear of people having stillbirth,
Yeah, that's
this
one
is
of
one
the
of the
reasons.
causes."
One of the causes.
So everything the child would normally take in as, you know, the amniotic fluid and all those things he swallows while he's in the womb, the child wasn't taking in anything. You know, so I said to him, "So isn't there a way we can treat it? Isn't there something we can do?" And he says, "There's no way, we need to do surgery on him." And then after the surgery, then what happens? He says 3 things can happen. 1, we go in there, we look, and we see that it's just a little bit of his intestines that have gone bad. At that point, I stop him and I ask him, "How do you know if the intestines have gone bad?" And he says to me, "Once the intestines change color from bright pink to purple or black, it means that there's no sign of life." So I said to him, "Okay." He said, "Okay, depending on how much purple or black we find, we can actually cut it off if it's not too much, attach what is left that is still bright pink, and he'll live a normal life. 2, we might go in there and find out that a lot of it is actually purple and black. And that means that we literally have to take all of that out. Whatever little bit is left, we'll try to fix a colostomy bag. That they'll hang a sack outside of his body to collect his waste." And I looked at him again and I'm like, this tiny little boy. And I said,
until
"Okay,
he's grown enough.
Yeah, until he's old enough to until he's old enough
return
to
for
return
a
for a
major
major surgery." And I looked at him. I picked up my phone and I called my husband. And I said, "Babes, they're asking me to sign papers. They're taking him in for surgery." And my husband said, "Surgery for what?" I said, "They called it intestinal malrotation or volvulus, depending on how far it had gone." My husband said, "Sign the papers, nothing is going to happen to him." So I signed the papers and I told the doctor, I said, "Doctor, take my son in there and bring him back to me." And the doctor said, "He'll be okay." So they wheeled him in and I sat there. At this point, I was totally broken. I was weak. I wasn't aware of my environment, really. All I knew was that there was trouble. At that point, my husband was still trying to get things to the hospital. He was on his way coming. I walked out, and while I was walking out, somebody said to me, "Don't worry, your son will be fine. If this doctor cannot take care of your son, nobody else can. If this doctor cannot do this surgery, nobody else can." And I looked at her and I said, "My son is going to be fine, I know, thank you." And I walked out to the waiting room. Immediately I got to the waiting room, I lay down flat on the floor and I broke into tears. I tried to sing, the words were not coming, but God saw my heart. I tried to pray, the words were not coming, but God saw my heart. He knew what my heart desire was. And I just kept saying, "God, God, I am a living miracle. My son is a living miracle. nothing will happen to my son. He will live a full life. He will fulfill purpose. He will achieve successes beyond our imagination. I just kept saying things. After a while, I got up and then I walked out and then I saw my husband. He had come with his friend. So they all walked in and my husband's friend immediately said, let's begin to pray. Where's King? I said, yes, they've taken him for surgery. And it was like, okay, we need to start praying. So we started praying and we started praying in tongues. And we were praying and we were praying. Around past 1, my husband's friend suddenly said, stop praying. And in my mind, I'm like, we will pray till this surgery is over. Are we not taking charge of the atmosphere, you know? And then he said, God just opened his eyes. So I wanted to hear what he wanted to say. And he said, there are angels standing beside each of us there at that time. And they're standing like they're holding papers in their hand. Like, you know the way a waiter stands in a restaurant waiting to take your order. That it looks like they're waiting to take instructions from us on what to do. That we should start to send them on errands. So our direction of prayers changed. And we now started sending those angels on errands. I personally kept saying the doctor should forget everything they had learned over the years and listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit, telling them what to do. You know, so we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. After a while, my husband said, it's done. Let's drop the prayers. Let's not even give the audience to the devil anymore. The Bible says we should ask. And even while we are asking, God had already answered. So let's stop and let's just stand in faith. So we held our hands. And as we were about to hold our hands, the assistant surgeon came in. So in my mind, I was like, oh, wow, interesting. Surgery is over. You know, our prayers have worked. And she says, you know, surgery is a very interesting thing. Your son's intestines are all over the table. And I'm looking at her like, do you know, hi, you're talking to the mother. You're not just gisting somebody. And she's like, very interesting. I don't know why, but Dr. Shah says we should pull out his intestines. We had to cut him in 4 places. I'm like, which part of the small baby? 4 places. How? Are you cutting? You know? And she, we had to cut him in, we had to pull out his intestines from his navel. And I don't know what Dr. Shah is looking for, but he's just scrounging through the intestines. My mind just went to our Lero in the market here. And I'm like, really, my child? And she said, anyway, I just came to let you know that your son is strong. He's doing really well. At the point, we actually took him off life support and his heart, his lungs, everything are still working fine, you know. And I'm like, thank you very much, no problem, blah, 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 blah. And one very fake smile. And then she left. So we sat down. At that point, that's when we realized, what is even in this intestinal malrotation and volvulus they say our son has? So everybody brought out their phone and started Googling. That's how we even knew that, okay, oxygen wasn't getting to the intestine, blah, blah, blah. And then at a point, they now said it happens to one out of 500 children born. I screamed. I said, devil, you are a madman. You looked at 500 children, and it's my own you sought to touch. Today, you will know that I am a living miracle. At this point, I wasn't scared anymore. I was like sure, like I knew my name. Like I knew that his name is King. I knew that God had taken charge. There was no, the initial fear and worry that I was coming from had been taken care of in the place of prayer. So he came, he was shaking his head and I'm like, Doctor, how is my son doing? And he says, your son is very strong. And I'm like, okay. Then he says, you brought him here right on time. I can't guarantee that this child will have survived till tomorrow morning. And I said, doctor, why? He said, look at these pictures. Then he showed us these pictures. And from the pictures, the amount of bright pink from the intestine that we could see was like your pinky, like your little finger. And he said that's all that was left normal. And I'm looking at him like, but you said it's fine. And he said, well, what happened? Something strange happened actually. While he was in surgery, he had cut my son in the first place to be able to see how much of the intestines had gone bad. All he could see was black. He explained to us also that while he was trying to figure out what to do, because King was so little, he didn't see how he was going to feed a little child like that with a colostomy bag. He was trying to figure out what to do. He said he heard something say to him, do not cut off any part of that boy's intestine. Yeah. When he said that, myself and my husband started smiling because we knew the exact time that had happened. Yes, we knew. When he heard it, he was a bit confused, so he held back and he heard the same voice tell him, bring out his intestines and start to look for every place that is tied and lose it. So he told his assistants, this is what I'm going to do. Let's bring out the intestines. So they cut him open in his navel and pulled out the whole length of his intestine. Everything. And one by one, they started picking each intestine, checking to find the places that were loosened. And each time they found a place that was tied, sorry, not loosened, tied. Each time they found a place that was tied, they would loosen it and move on to the next. He said by the time they loosened the last one they found, that little pink part that was left started to supply life to the intestine.
Right before their eyes, everything started changing from pink to purple
to pink. And then the black part changed from black to purple before it now changed to pink. He said he stood there and he was watching.
Flowing.
And he said in his own words, he said it was such a beautiful sight. I have never seen anything like this before. And he stood there watching and he just watched as the miracle took place on its own. Now his intestines were supposed to have been removed, but not one. Like the Bible said that not one strand of your hair will get lost and God will not be aware of it. Nothing was cut off. And after all of that, through all of that, our son came out. A living miracle. A testimony. And they wheeled him out, they took him to the ICU. And when they took him to the ICU, they actually told us that he was going to be there for a couple of days. Believe me, when you say that you're a living miracle, you better understand what you are saying to yourself. My son didn't spend 24 hours in ICU. Yeah. He did not spend. Before that evening, they came and said, get him out, give him a proper room and let him stay where the other children are getting well. This is somebody who had been through 4 hours of surgery, 5 days old. And the doctors kept saying, your son is very strong. And I said, no, it's not him. It's not him. It's the God that we serve. It's the word that has been spoken to us from the beginning of this year that was holding him up, that had held him through. And I kept telling them, he's a living miracle. And one of the nurses jokingly asked me, are you going to name him Miracle? And I just laughed, you know. And I really want to thank God because through that, he was taken to the normal ward for kids. He was there for 7 days without food or water.
A 5-day-old baby.
A 5-day-old baby.
Now,
no food,
no
one water.
Has an excuse if they tell you to do dry fast.
Yes, my husband kept telling me whenever they tell us to fast.
If a 5-day-old baby can do 5 days,
if a 5-day-old can do 7 days, you have no excuse.
Fast.
Basically, he was in there for 7 days without food, without water, and God kept him. Through it all, we came out victorious with 100% of our victory. Yeah. The word spoken over this house, the word over DCC became flesh and blood to me. I touched it with my hands. I felt it. Yes, I saw it with my eyes. And I want to take this opportunity to just tell anyone here who is believing God for anything, there is nothing that is beyond God.
Alright, cool.